Yeah.
So they haven't been pondering for a long time.
Good, good. God bless you. Pondering on it. Enlightened, yeah.
Father,
It's like Jerry Springer.
I know.
Jumping over chairs.
Sorry, I'm not like a saint and being multiple places at once.
Next question over here.
Yeah, exactly. Step said.
Father, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the difference between empathy and enmeshment, because I feel like I get the definitions confused and there's overlap in my mind, and so I would love your thoughts on how to, what the difference between those two are.
Well, empathy is perspective taking and feeling with a person. Enmeshment is being entangled in the emotional process of another person. One is completely tangled and is not able to facilitate any or foster any sort of healthy relationships, where the other one is just the opposite of that. Yeah.
So a couple things about, suffering and resilience. I wrote a whole paper on it for Oratorical Festival this year. It was based off of an amazing book I read called Loris. It's a fictional novel, but it's about the journey to repentance of this guy who finds himself embroiled in sin in medieval Russia. So he goes on a journey, he comes back to it. It's really profound, and it taught me a lot. And there's also a lot of holy foolery and weird things about time in there. And the other thing was a quote I had heard about why do bad things happen to good people came from St. Anthony the Great, where he talked about how he was praying to God one day, and he's like, "Oh Lord, why are there rich and why are there poor? Why are those with a home? Why are there those without?" And what God said was, "It's not your job to ponder these things." That was really it.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's all contained within the mystery of God. And God, who is unsearchable and unknowable in his ways, it's impossible for us to comprehend or intellectualize or rationalize or make sense of many of these things, any more than we can make sense of the mystery of the Holy Trinity, And I think it's in the book on St. Paisius. It came out years ago. It had like a kind of a sunset and a picture of his face on it. I can't remember who it was authored by, but I think the first or second chapter was on divine providence. And there's a beautiful story in there. It involved like 3 or 4 people. And one of the characters was kind of witnessing all these things that were happening, like a stealing and a murder, and then this and that and all this. And he's just like, "Oh my God, what the heck is going on?" And he just could not understand what was happening. And I'm not going to tell you, I can't remember the entire story, but an angel of the Lord appeared to this man. He says, "Well, this happened because of that, and then that happened because this happened, and then this came back around and happened here, and this happened." And he's just like, "Oh, well, that makes sense." Yeah, but it didn't before. Before you were like, how can a merciful God allow this to happen? Mm-hmm. Just because we can't understand it, now we're going to put God on the judgment seat? Mm-hmm. Justice, God's justice is very, very different than our justice. Mm-hmm. I mean, what human being would have said to the thief on the cross who said, "Remember when you come to your kingdom," we would say, "No, you're being punished. This is your penalty for what you've done. No." You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is. I mean, it's for us to be so whatever, to think that everything that happens in life, it doesn't make sense to me. Then I don't know, God. I don't know how I believe in this. You know, why would you do this? This is not, I mean, in my deepest part of my being, this is wrong, it doesn't make sense, I don't know, it can't be. What is going on? You know what I mean? That's because we lack humility. The humble of heart would say, God knows all things, and all things work for the glory and for the good of all people. There are things well before the event that we're judging, and things that will happen well after that we have no idea about. But it's that full picture that God sees so that all things work in the way that they're supposed to work. And our narrow-mindedness, we zoom in on this, and says, well, that doesn't make sense, and why would God do this? Why? People ask me all the time, why would God let this happen to this person, or to this child, or to that country, or to this horse, or to whatever? I'm like, I'm not God, I don't know. But I do know one thing, I fully trust in Him. 100%. And if it doesn't make sense to me, too bad for me. Because I'm not going to base anything on what I think is right and what's wrong, what's just and what's unjust. I have a God that I worship that I hold that to. And everything is right and just with Him. I'm either going to believe that or not. You know, we're either going to be kind of wishy-washy about it or hot and cold, you know, depending on the latest event in the world with God, or we're not, you know. Yeah. Sorry, that was a little bit more firm, but. Yeah. Yes, Becky.
Hi.
Hi. Good to see you.
Oh, I got a big mouth.
You can use that anyways, that's fine.
So, I understand that suffering is for your edification. I understand that, or our edification. I have, and I'm sure we all felt this way, when somebody's been through a really traumatic experience, or several traumatic experiences, I found that instead of feeling edified, they end up in a cycle of despair from the memory of the trauma. So,
What do you mean, instead of feeling edified by it?
well, like you said, we know that our sufferings make us better people, right?
Yeah.
And, but
that's all understood within a context of the meaning of suffering in life and in relationship to God. We can't just tell the average person, I know you just like suffered like unbelievable, but it's for your own good. I mean, God loves you and He's going to.
exactly, that's exactly where I'm going.
No, we can't do that. that's like horrible.
So,
You know.
but, so is that where forgiveness comes in? I mean,
Well, it depends on. Are you talking about forgiveness toward perpetrators, or are you talking?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So that's another subject.
so how can that be considered edification?
Well, I'm going to separate out the actual suffering from the perpetrator, even though they're connected. Okay. So the one thing is forgiving someone who has really harmed you, a perpetrator who's really harmed you. This is huge in the life of a person. Okay. We have to be extremely gentle, pastoral, caring with anything we say, not to jump in and say anything too soon or too stupid. It's at first it's just being there and just listening and being a calm, non-anxious presence. Healing in those instances take often a very long time. Just processing what happened. When it comes to the person who inflicted the harm, that is connected, but I would never bring that up unless the person brought it up. Because then you're talking about an actual individual. And I never tell someone, ever, well, as a Christian, you need to forgive them. I would personally never, ever, ever, ever say that. I know that that's the right thing to do. but there's a time and a place where that's going to be received, and a time and a place when it's not. And I can't rush that time. That is going to come by the grace of God only. And I don't know if this person is struggling with God. That's another thing. So these are not, all you need to do is situations, or all you need to feel is. These things are very complex and deep and take much time. You know, and there's much that's been written on forgiveness from regarding horrible crimes and perpetrators, from rape to murder to all sorts of things. I mean, even 60 Minutes had did a thing. I mean, lots of people, they talk about the power of forgiveness and all that. Yes, we know what that is, but again, it's something that it's like you're like walking on glass, very, very gently and softly, until that person is at a place where they're ready to now talk about it from a perspective of, I want this. I don't know if I can do it, but I want to be able to forgive now. But a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 6 months ago, they were not even in that place. So when it comes up, it comes up. You know, that to me, to forgive like that is by the grace of God, and the person working with God to come to that place.
But how can you feel that this suffering was for your edification?
You can't in the beginning.
Okay.
You can't rush that. That's why I said I wouldn't say, you know what, I know this was a horrible experience or an experience you've had, but it really is for you. I would never say that. I would just be present. I walk alongside until they start to come up and raise up and they can breathe and get some air. And now they're a little bit more open and ready to say or to receive or whatever. You know, it's a very, very delicate journey. Very delicate journey. Yeah. It's interesting, I mean, there's somewhat of a parallel with the woman at the well. You know, when Christ went there, he put himself beneath her. He was helpless. He needed someone to help him get water. So he put himself beneath her. Can you help me draw, with some water? Oh, Jews and Samaritans don't talk. So it was interesting how Christ, he wanted to call her to himself. This is what he does with all people, right? But he didn't get to the well and says, "Hi, Fotini. You're probably wondering how I know your name. Well, I'm actually God and man, but that's kind of complicated. So I'm here to get some water, but honestly, I'm here because I want to convert you. Did you know that I am the Christian? I'm here to convert you. So let me tell you what you need to do and what you need to believe, okay? And let me also tell you about some of your past, because I'm good at that. I have a lot of. That's how we approach things. He was so humble and so meek and so gentle and so, beautifully like that. And he just had this gentle conversation with her, and it began to slowly draw her into him until the point where she was ready to receive what he was going to say. And it converted her heart like that. When I work with people, especially when I did, I'm not practicing now, but even in day-to-day things when I meet with people, whatever, I have to assess very quickly sort of the depth and the breadth and the width and the height and the severity and all of that of whatever it is they're talking about. And that comes, I think, just over time working with people. But before if that's something I feel I have to do. So I inquire a lot. I just wonder a lot with people and things. I have to have more understanding, so how to know how to proceed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that for a second. Is that I actually was at work during Hurricane Katrina,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to tell the story there, but it's the resilience part of it goes with now. Oh man, I got to work a 10-hour day. We're a shorter person. We're
Mhm.
calling. Not my worst day at work ever. I don't think I'm going to top that one again.
Yeah.
That was a whole week of, yeah.
Was that perspective change then, perspective shift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's like, I don't think I'm ever gonna have a worse week at work again.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it does help me with perspective whenever I'm
It's
having a
it's a
bad day.
great personal illustration you share with us, yeah, that's a perfect example. You know, when we are experiencing, or we're so close to death, whether it's losing a loved one or whatever, when we come that close and we're confronted with it, we can't run from it, we can't avoid it, it's there, right? Do you know in those moments we are in our most right mind that we will ever be in? Because all that matters right now is what's right in front of you, that person, that life, that connection, that relationship. You're not worried about whether you have groceries for next week. You're not worried about how you're gonna pay your bill at the end of the week, nothing. You are so tuned in, so connected, so focused, and this, from my experience, experience the presence of Christ in these moments, everything you've been sharing, these are the moments where we can experience. That is where we are most vulnerable, and in the utmostness of our vulnerability, that's when we are most deeply exposing our heart to Christ. Now, if we can learn to do that without these big things, then we're going to really start making progress. We don't have to be something or any way else in order to be with Christ. We don't have to feel like praying. We don't have to feel like we're in a good spiritual place. Christ wants us to come to him the way I feel and where I am right now. I don't feel like praying. I'm upset with someone. I feel distance from you. I'm angry at someone. And I'm actually saying this to God. So here I am. This is me. Have mercy on me. This is my prayer. So it's not like I feel all these things so I can't really go and pray. That to me, why? So Christ is going to be saying, okay, well, when you get your act together and you feel really good, then come and you can pray to me. You see what we do in our minds in terms of like how we think about this stuff?
Sounds rational to me.
What's that?
Sounds rational to me.
Yeah, because our rationale is in a fallen state. Of
Yeah.
course it would. You know? Yeah. Mother Siddlewana talks about that. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And I remember even like years ago reading a little bit about the life of Father Seraphim Rose and or even St. Paisios or others. I mean, they're like, you know, I'm really angry at you, God, and I don't even know where I stand with you right now. But that's what they're saying to him, and I love that. Be real, don't be fake. Be authentic, don't be, something else. We already are sort of trapped in this sort of inauthentic life, where we're feeling like we have to perform and project and seem certain ways, and even it completely has made its way through the Orthodox Church. The way people dress, the way they bow, the way they hold themselves, the way they talk. It's like, is this an acting class that I missed or something? I mean, just be real. Be. You know what I'm saying? It's. Anyway.
But then don't we do, I mean, not don't we, I do it. Then I take that to go to that idea of, if God really knew who I was, he probably wouldn't want. So, I
Right.
you
That's
said
a daddy thing.
I sit in here, and I'm like, look around, like you can hide yourself from everybody, right? I mean, who you are. But then you also think, like,
Mhm.
if God really knew who I was, it's like newsflash.
Yeah, that's the projecting onto the one who knows all things.
Get past that.
Yeah. What's that?
Get past that, it's hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, I think I've gotten past it, but I've had to do work around that, The question is, why is it important to, hold on, let me see, I want to rephrase this. Okay, so here's the therapist speaking in me. You don't have to answer this, by the way, but, so where in the past did you have to be perfect in order to be loved by somebody? In order to be accepted by them, in order to, that's the question. Again, don't answer that, because this is not group therapy. But that often is what the question becomes. Where in life has this happened before, where you feel like you had to be a certain way in order to either be loved, accepted, or validated, or to avoid getting hit or, you know, demeaned verbally or whatever? Where else is that? Where's that been? And then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm living out my childhood, you know, relationship with my father, and he's dead. I mean, it's really weird, but I'm still doing this, and now I'm doing it with God. I'm projecting my relationship with my father on God. Why would God love me if I'm sinful and imperfect? Even though he said it's why you're sinful and imperfect that I came and died for you. He didn't say, get your act together first before I come. Kind of get it together a little bit. I'm not going to come, you know, you guys are bad. It's like, I mean, God says this, and we experience that, and so we listen to this, but we don't listen to that. So sometimes just making that connection and understanding
So
where
you
that's
make the
coming
connection,
from.
then what?
What's that?
Make the connection, then what?
You mean the connection that you're just doing it?
I mean, where it comes from.
Well, oftentimes that is, that has great power to it and meaning. It's like, oh my God, it's the aha moment, the realization. That in itself, oftentimes, can be what we need in order to start severing that cable of how we're continuing to function with others as we related and function in relationship to that person, you know. And then I think the other part of it is what I spoke about earlier personally, was that what was behind my father's functioning the way he did in relationship to me. That adds more depth. Now I'm starting to see things more clearly and accurately. So it really wasn't about my performance and being a good boy or a bad boy. I mean, the person giving me the data and information about who I am was really distorted. He was coming from, I mean, his understanding and perspective of me and his ability to see it's like there was a glass that was full of mud on it. So he was kind of giving me information, but he did not see me clearly. So he you know what I'm saying? All these sort of pieces start to move together, you know. Again, it's not what I think. If you understand that and you make that connection, you're going to be good. It's really easy. Just click, 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 and then you're good to go. This has taken me years, but all those components are absolutely vital and important to putting the puzzle together to create the actual picture. Because it still goes back to the prayer that was given to me. Help me to understand. Lord, help me to see and love myself as you see me and love me, and help me to see and love all people as you see and love all people. That's my vertical, direct connection sort of thing. Because I was at a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot continue to live this way. It's screwing up my life and my relationships. I need this. I have this understanding. I've done this work. I've come to these aha moments. Things are sort of coming together, but it's still, you know, it's like it's just like that last thing. And then out of that place of sort of desperation, Lord, I can't do it anymore. I can't. That's when I came. And I think that's very intentional. I feel like God was saying, I was wondering when you were going to actually get, you know, way down there on your knees and say, help, I can't breathe. And then, that's just my own lived experience. But with Jackie's, you know, difficulty.
Decades left.
It's sort of, you know, what you mentioned about, you know, is it an act? Did you take action? You know, like sometimes you can say, well, I need to be in perfect Orthodox mode before I pray. And it's
I don't even know what that means.
right, and it's like that's not even a thing. It's really not, because it's, a true relationship isn't just a mode you turn on or anything like that. You know, the relationship with Christ isn't a mode. But I think over, you know, the 20 or so years that I've been Orthodox, it's been heartbreaking to see people come and go, because people convert and then leave almost because they felt like they couldn't, it's like a burnout, just like I couldn't keep the act up. And just like, actually that's really good. You shouldn't keep the act up because it has to become, life is hard enough without, you know, when we're truly honest and when we're truly striving for Christ, you know, it's like, anything else is you know, enriching. It can be a tool or aids, things like that, but aids to our faith and stuff like that. But if we're distracted with that, you know.
That's because sometimes the church can be presented as an institution. Rules, laws, boundaries, this, that, this, yes, no, black, white, follow this, don't follow that. And especially for people converting and coming into Orthodoxy, and that's just so new, it's just like, whoa, okay, I mean, how do I argue against 2,000 years of this stuff? And I mean, it's obviously, it's boy, but if we come at it from that perspective, in all the externals, and what you should and shouldn't do, and how you should and shouldn't do, and all stuff like that, yeah, there's no way. There's no way. And the fact of the matter, whoever's saying it, whether it's a Christian or a priest, they're not following it all. But it sounds good, and it's right, and this is what we have to do. Look at the two greatest commandments. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That is it. Outside of that, which is the relational dimensions, the essence of our being and personhood in Christ and in our life here, then we have everything that I was mentioning here of how that sort of looks in relationship to people. It's about the other. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. If you wish to be forgiven, forgive others. Love others. Do not judge others. My spiritual father talks and writes about a lot about the commandments of God are the flowers around that. And they are life-giving. They're not restrictive, they're life-giving. You know? And so if we teach orthodoxy from that perspective, and we are living it out to the best of our ability, then it's going to be a different end and story. But if it becomes about external appearances and all of these things, and I'm not saying those things aren't important, but they're secondary. Fasting is secondary. If it were primary, St. Porphyrius wouldn't be a saint because he couldn't fast.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so there are things that human persons can do, and some can't do due to physiological, mental, whatever things. All right, so nothing that is offered in Orthodoxy is going to be given as a primary thing when human frailty is not going to be able to fulfill that. It's just like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, you need to get on that conveyor belt because you're not one of the strong ones. It's almost like Christian ethnic cleansing or something. You know, it's, so before we start, I mean, we talk about prayer, we talk about fasting, we talk about frustrations, we talk about all these things. Those are good things. We have to be careful though in how we present that. It's a timing thing, but it's also a capacity thing. You know, we do not want to be guilty of what Christ said to the Pharisees. You bind people with heavy burdens. And we can do that in our church. And they're not receiving or feeling or experiencing or getting really the essence of it. Yes?
The first time I walked into the Orthodox Church in Boston, the priest was mopping the floor because the roof was leaking and the floor was wet. And he said, "Why do you want to be in this church? We've got nothing here."
That sounds like a compassion, fatigue, burnout.
You didn't hear the last part he said. "We've got nothing here unless you want an experience of God."
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So never mind all the hoo-ha, never mind the decorations, the incense.
I love that.
like
Yeah.
I have one comment, Father, on that, because I I'm really glad you, thank you for asking the question, and I'm really glad you articulated that, because I think that is, you know, the ultimate beauty and perfection in a sense of the orthodox expression of Christianity, is that it has this